Professor Banafa, thank you, and thank you for attending another conversation with us, and welcome to Cybersecurity Magazine. In the context of COVID-19, we want to continue this conversation, except the focus this time is on the supply chain, how the technology can help the supply chain of especially necessities like food, meat, milk, which we have been hearing about, how that can be enhanced, improved, and helped because of the crisis it faces because of the disease. So, Professor Banafa, what is tagging with Internet of Things?
Well, I mean, the whole thing about Internet of Things as a platform for, for supply chain, for example, which is the subject of what we talk about it now, is to understand where is your product and where is your digital service or product, in the whole supply chain, and have this full knowledge about it, where it is, what happened to it, what's the next step, what have we done, how far it is from me. Now, before we jump into this, talking about the technical detail about this one, it's very important to understand that COVID-19 exposed how fragile, inconsistent and weak is the infrastructure for the supply chain all over the world. The reason for this one is you find some pockets where they're well established, you find some companies who have a complete control on the pipeline, and you have many countries and many companies are really not paying attention to the infrastructure of the supply chain and the monitoring of that one. They rely on others. And when the others went down, this is what happened to them. Now, back to the tagging, situation for the supply chain or for the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things has four parts. The first one is the sensors, the second is the network, the third one is the cloud/AI, the fourth one is the applications. So when you are really using IoT in any of the industries, you're using four of them. So you have those sensors that will sense the temperature, the location, the movement, signature, scanning, whatever, you name it, any kind of sensing, whether it is a very binary simple thing or it is sophisticated, this will give you multiple data. And then you transmit that one using, technologies, available technologies like, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, the internet, LTE, 5G, hopefully in the coming future. And then you go to the cloud, which is process this data and give you the dashboard, will tell you exactly what is your product. And then the applications, which is how can you control it? How can you, stop it, receive it, control the flow and understand, from where to where the product or the service is delivered.
So the benefit from Internet of Things, would it be more local or would it have a larger impact for the global supply chain?
It's actually at both levels. If you look at companies like IBM, which is a leader when it comes to technology like this one, you're going to find that they apply this one on the supply chain for huge companies like the Walmart. The Walmart is it's one of the biggest users for the supply chain, and they're controlling that one. Apple is another example of this. So the radio frequency ID, which is one of the leading, technologies that IBM is really working with, is a big thing for them. They want to track the trucks when they leave, the warehouse, where they are, what happened, how much product they unload in one place compared to the other, and everything is digitized. The same thing with Apple. I place the order, I can go through the whole cycle from China all the way to San Jose if that phone is delivered to me. So the line between the benefits between local and global is blurred. The reason for this one is the local is using the global network so they can survive and get their product and services.
And finally, is the understanding correct in that case that IoT makes the supply chain more robust?
Yes, because knowledge is power. The more I know about where is my stuff, the better that I can make that decision. Simple example, when you place an order on Amazon, and you have this tracking where, you see, okay, deliver soon, and then you go and see where it is. for you feel comfortable about using the service again. At the same time, you can make a decision about it. Say, should I buy it again or not? Should I stop it? Should I cancel it? So it's make it very, very agile. It's make it very, very helpful for everybody down the supply chain. And this is all given that the security is confirmed for the supply chain, because there's so many things can go wrong, especially if you're talking about big products, services. That's another concern. IoT is taking care of it when using different technologies.
That was actually going to be my question about that. Doesn't make the IoT with more sensors, more technology essentially involved in the process, doesn't that make the IoT more vulnerable than a traditional supply chain?
I agree. It's actually, the more sensors you have, the more expanding and span and outreach of the system, the more you are vulnerable for attacks. That's given. But everything has this balance. Yes, I gain information, I can do better, so I have to think about security. There are many techniques used for that. One of the things that we talked about it before, which is the blockchain as an example for that. The sensor itself, when we talk about the sensor is the lowest item or lowest level for the IoT. And the reason for this one is we don't expect that much from it. So in order for you to secure that sensor, you have to make it smarter. And if you ever heard the term smart X, for example, smart car, smart building, smart sensor, you have to understand it comes with three elements. It comes with an operating system. It comes with the processing with the CPU for that process, and it comes with some kind of algorithm so that can process that. So that's too much for a simple sensor. If you really want to have the security, you have to expand your view about not just a binary sensor. Sensors has to be smarter. And this is where you can protect yourself against any kind of somebody taking over that sensor. Attacks like deprive of sleep, or denial of sleep, is basically you drain the battery of the sensor and then you replace it with something else. The interception of the signal itself. Signal is very simple. Okay, we need encryption, and this is going to be done if we have a smart sensors. Those can encrypt it and send it. So it's rethinking the whole thing about the network and what exactly I want. One example of this one, there is a company that deliver fish from India to the Philippines, and 40% of the fish, rotting, it's gone. Why? Because they accepted that, and they lose 40%, and that's huge. So the United Nations intervene with this and say, how can we help? So they have the idea of using two kind of technologies. Number one is the IoT, where they have sensor for the temperatures, for the weight, for the humidity, everything you can think about it in this kind of industry. And they have the transmission goes, using the LTE, using, the available satellite in that area. And they document everything, which is the reading from the sensors using the blockchain. And there's a company in India, startup, that I met the CEO of that company, is doing this kind of stuff. And that reduced that 40% to something like 5 to 10%. So more food, more delivery, more money at the same time. You want a security, pay more, invest more, and it's a long term. It's an investment. It's not an expense. And I'm from the team which always believe that security is not an afterthought. Security should be at the building block at the beginning, should be part of the DNA of any project we are doing, any technology we are building.
So about that security, though, if you want to build in security into a sensor, right, and it will make the costs for the sensor higher. And obviously, I think in a commercial sort of corporate environment, that extra dollar for a sensor, that I don't know. Does it make a difference? I mean, $1 per sensor doesn't make a difference, but if you need thousands or hundred thousands of sensors, that's a couple of $100,000 in there. So does it make a difference for the corporate environment? Because I know for the consumer environment, it does make a difference. I mean, if someone would have the choice between, say, an IP camera with security built in, but that's $10 more expensive than the other one without security, most people would probably go for the cheaper one, right?
Again, it's back to the basic element here, which is you're looking for the short term or looking for a long term. Over the long term, you are recovering this one and making profit at the top of it. Because the example of the fish, you went from losing 40% to something like 5 to 10%. So you find yourself really covering the expenses. At the same time, you're making more money. Now, this is a business decision more than anything else. And it is one of the things that a lot of CEOs and the C-level, executive, they always struggle with that one. Should I spend this one up front and then, make sure that things will be better, or should I just live with whatever I want? From my perspective, when I am, talking to anybody who has that capability of making that decision, I tell them, just go with security. Security should be part of the DNA of the company. Security is not the responsibility of people who are, running the IT. Security should be at the mind of every single person, from the receptionist to the CEO of the company. They have to believe in that. And the problem with people not thinking security as the framework of everything we are doing is now we're dealing with consequences. And consequences should not be something which is a breach of data or you lose data. It should be something like this one. You lose products. For example, you lose, the fish. And the same thing with Walmart. Walmart have all these security, has all these, radio frequency, ID, all of these things. Why not just send a truck? Well, that's helped them a lot to see the weight of the truck, the number of the items. At the same time, now you are connecting everything. So people taking something from the shelf, it just, cancel that one from the inventory, triggered, the algorithm for, sending it to certain companies, do some kind of analysis, say, if people demanding this, then they will demand it in the in the neighborhood or in a different place. So it's if the security is not entangled inside the fiber of the way people think about doing business, we will be dealing with one problem after the other, and we'll spend more money. We'll hire more people, but it's going to be too late. One more thing before I close this point. Think about Facebook. What happened to them when they didn't pay attention to security? For them, is they struggling so much with this. They lost so many opportunities. They lost the trust of people. They are trying to bring, now they have this supreme, number of people who are really, controlling the content because they are worried about something like Cambridge Analytica. So the trust is lost there. And, without that trust, which is extremely important for you to do business, and in the world of the online, the trust built on something we call the SSP, security, safety, and privacy. We don't have that one, and this is translated to transparency, then your business is actually at danger.
Right. So just to take a step back, a little away from security for the moment, and we'll eventually go back again into the privacy and security issues, but I just want to contextualize it a little bit. So clearly, Internet of Things is to optimize resource allocation, just to put it in a very theoretical manner, as an economist would understand. And the idea behind it is not only to improve your cost or reduce your cost, but to see it as a revenue center, I suppose. More specific to the news that we are hearing about, farmers having to drain the mill because they're just not able to supply it to the shops, or in the case of meat, where the farmers who have to take the meat to the butcher to find that finally supplies to their retailers, there has been impediments because, again, of the disease. How do you see Internet of Things as such being an optimizer of these resources? How can we improve the allocation of this?
It is again to knowledge. The four element of the IoT will give you this kind of understanding of the whole cycle of the supply chain. The situation you talk about it, or the two examples you gave are really a valid examples of, we're not ready for Plan B. Once you design this one, you have to have part of your design is what if something happened? It's not necessarily a virus, could be a war happened or something happened, or not even disease for us, disease for the animals. Now, what are you going to do with that? So instead of having an access of the product, you have a shortage. How can where you can find the extra that you can use and get for the, for the consumers. So the more organized, the more structured is your information and your supply chain, and the more information you have about every single point of the outcome, from the sensors to the way you transmit the information to the way you analyze this information to the application used to track all of this, the better your decision. One of the biggest things we found out about COVID-19 is it's just exposed the infrastructure. The infrastructure is scattered, fragmented, and weak. And an example of this one, everybody is supposed to go and work at home. When we receive that order, everybody's looking at his, room, his office at home. If they have an office at home, what do I need? I need this and this and this. I'm ready. Do I have the Wi-Fi? This is the problem. It is you are really behind the curve when it comes to this process. Whether it is an access or a shortage, the information you're going to get over time from using all the capabilities of the Internet of Things, it's going to make you prepared. You're going to have a plan, and this plan will say, in case of this one, this is what we're going to do. In case of this one, this is what's going to switch. The thing about it, if the Wi-Fi is not working, we're going to use the cellular, network. If the cellular network, we're going to use, the Bluetooth. We're going to use this. So you are really ready for this. You don't act when the disaster happens. That's a disaster recovery. You have something to protect you before you even get to that part. And all the information you get from the IoT will fill in the holes for you in that plan.
Okay. So, the takeaway again from this is we as a society have to preempt for the next crisis and the next and the next. And certainly technology should be used as a tool to further this. My concern with this are many, and I suppose it's probably reflected by other people as well, is the world is interconnected. How does one govern the data that is collected? It relates to the privacy. Which country or which body is allowed to share what information of which individual from the supply chain, or of which corporate, and to what extent? Who manages this? Who governs this?
It's a good question about the data. The data also is an issue here because of the conflicting intentions of the governments. You're talking about GDPR, you're talking about CCPA, you're talking about different protocols or different laws that will protect that. In one places, it's open. In other places, it's very strict. Now, this is a political view here. Now, companies, what they have done, like Apple, for example, who have a control on the supply chain, they kept everything for themselves, and nobody complained about this one because there's an international treaties about this. Organization like the United Nations, looking forward, learning from the COVID-19, using a project like MAPASA, which is MAPASA, the project that used the blockchain to gather all this information. The freedom of sharing this information under a certain privacy law and technologies would make everybody feel comfortable about it. It's not sitting in a database where people can access this one and sell it on the dark web. It is part of a project that's run by the CDC of the United States, of China, Hong Kong, the Ministry of Health in the United Kingdom, all of these big names that get together and they say, we will have a project, and this project will deal with the data of hospitals. Data of this, which because we expect, something going to happen in the shortage there. He's a very clear example of the consequences of not really planning for the next day. Look at the oil prices. What happened to the oil price? You have tankers, rolling, in the high seas. Nobody want to buy them. It's getting to the point where if I have the oil, I have to pay you to get the oil. Why? Because they want to get rid of it. And this is the information about the supply and change and the demand of the different countries. will have an impact on the economy of, Middle Eastern countries or countries that depends wholly on the oil, and this is actually reflecting on their people and, on their economy. And this is where you see it. You see, if the left hand doesn't know what's going on with the right hand, this is what we're gonna get. We're gonna get confusion. We're gonna get a stock market that collapse. So you start with the technology, you go to the social, you go to the business consequences. To solve it, go back to the technology. And I still stand by my saying, which is the winner in this COVID-19 pandemic is technology. And we're gonna see how far we can go with this technology, how accelerated the digital transformation will be, as the COVID-19 is the catalyst that pushed so many people to go to technology that never thought that they can use it. You're talking about huge percentage of companies investing in technology now. They say we don't need it. I mean, work has changed forever. There's no way for you to have 7,000 people in the same building as before. That's not going to be the same. So you have to be creative about that. And this is take us back to how much we are ready for this. And IoT is touching on the infrastructure of the supply chain. Starvation, it's going to go all the way if we don't have information that will help us to see where and how and when what happened to this supply, what happened to this, this product.
Finally, I have one question, which is more generic in that case. It seems that as a species, we are very innovative. We find problems, especially the engineers see problems as an opportunity to come up with new innovation. But it seems at least in this case, it seems things are half-cooked. You have the technology where you had standardization activities going on, it's still going forth, but we don't have the proper system in place to effectively roll it out. How does one achieve that? I know we cannot answer this in the next 5 minutes of this conversation, but I think this should be something, there should be a deeper thinking behind it, and perhaps a template to be thought of, which could be applied to future technologies in that case.
It is cooperation, collaboration, working between the different parties. I mean, what happened with the PPEs of the medical supplies, a bidding war that, something I used to pay for $5, now it is 500. That shows you that if there is no collaboration and cooperation between the different parties, this is what we're going to have. The technology is as good as the person using it, and utilize that. I mean, I could have the best computer in the world sitting in my, office or in my home, and I'm not using it. It's a piece of junk. It's a piece of, of a hardware that not used. It is, the human factor is also important in this part, which is whenever I talk about the 4 elements of the IoT, there is a big square around it, which is the human is really the driving force for this, for every part of that. Planning, running, processing the data, taking actions based on this data. And if there is no cooperation at that level, which is the highest, intelligent level in any system we deal with it, the human, then we're going to problem. And I've seen this one very clear on COVID-19. Everybody's saying, okay, it's only me. I want to just deal with my problems. Europe has the same problem. They are rethinking the EU. Why? Because of what happened in Italy. They couldn't help Italy to deal with that one. Spain suffered a lot from that one because everybody is saying, I have to protect and save my citizens first, which is nothing wrong with this one. It's a matter of why you're not ready for a situation like this. You think that we're not going to be invaded by aliens? Yeah, I mean, the viruses, consider them as aliens. What are you going to do? This is going to be a response to the aliens. There's going to be an easy way for them to take over, and they can say, hey, guys, keep fighting. We're going to take this over. So the collaboration, cooperation, also add at the top of that stack of this information. Technology is great. Resources is wonderful. Here comes the human where we're going to use this. Maypasa is the mind, the child of a mind of people who sat together and they say, we need a technology like this. IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, get together, show us what you have. And they told them you can use this technology. They implemented the make decision about that one. So there is no way for us, to get rid of that factor. That's going to be the real, driving force for any success in the future when it comes to implementation of using IoT in supply chain or any kind of, processing or monitoring of the infrastructure.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Prof. Banafa. Again, it has been very enlightening and a very important topic that we discussed. And well, to all of you, have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.